Football, beer, and above all, gambling filled up the horizon of their mind. To keep them in control was not difficult. All right, all right. I know what you're thinking. You knew we were going to open with an Orwell quote. That was the easy one. That was kind of silly. And besides, sort of insulting to my audience because I know you guys are thinking people. You're going to be here learning about the relevant events of the day. And besides, this whole premise that professional sports would be used to control people's minds or as some kind of psyop is just absurd on its face, right? 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 Anyway, so what did happen this week? Okay, let's get on with the real events of the day, shall we? This gentleman on the left, you know him, you love him, or maybe you hate him. The same could be said for the gentleman on the right. But what you cannot say is that this interview wasn't the journalistic event of the year, if not for the interview itself, for the backlash that it created. Tucker did not throw softballs at this man. No, indeed. And in fact, it's entertaining watching the same people that have done nothing but fawning praise pieces in interviews with Zelensky over the past couple of years say that Tucker was going to come at him with softballs. It was an incredible interview. I encourage each and every one of you to watch it while it is still on YouTube. Putin's knowledge of history, if I were forced to coin an adjective right off the top of my head, that adjective would be encyclopedic. And not only did he lay it out with the proper historical perspective, both how we arrived here and the current situation in Ukraine, but he laid it out in an accessible way. Now, you can say that Tucker is a useful idiot, and of course, the mainstream media certainly will, and they are. But at the end of the day, what you cannot deny was the truth that was spoken by this man on the right that we have been told forever is the Antichrist. Now, a lot of Americans, otherwise free thinking Americans, were saying that Tucker was so much of a traitor that he should not have been allowed back into the country. In fact, the EU and several EU countries tried to revoke his travel privileges to prevent him from getting back into the States. You can look this up. It was absolutely true. There were also rumors that Tucker was placed on one of Zelensky's crew's kill lists. Now, we can't verify that, and I have my doubts about the veracity of some of these claims, but you can verify that they tried to prevent him from traveling back to the States. They tried to revoke his travel privileges. What have you always heard me say? The truth does not need a law to protect it. It does need a propaganda machine, though. And I think the ultimate propaganda coup would have been for them to prevent him from flying back through legitimate channels into the United States. And since he had his camera crew with him, he could have just made his way to Mexico and walked across the unprotected southern border. Not an Eagle Pass, though. And speaking of border, yes, the border bill. This from Voice of America, House Speaker suggests border bill may be dead on arrival. Why? Because it wasn't a border bill in the first place. It was a war bill with a nice little tag. Do you guys remember last week's sermon on the power of propaganda? I could not have timed it better and I could not have written it as well if I had planned it out, because we got to see all of those methods put into place by the propaganda ministry over the course of this week. The gaslighting here is absolutely reprehensible. To turn it around after insisting that the border was under control and we knew better. Please ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears. Getting back to Orwell, don't pay attention to what's clearly right in front of your face. And the fact that they had the audacity to say that now, since the Republicans voted down on this border bill, that wasn't a border bill, it was a war bill with a border tag along, that it is somehow the Republicans' fault now that the border is insecure. Now, of course, no one's buying it. It doesn't matter. And what made it even less credible was once they removed the border provision, they went on to vote for the war funding. It turns out that the only borders that Republicans and Democrats can agree on, and when I refer to Republicans, I refer to the rhinos, the swamp Republicans, the only borders they can seem to agree on are this one in Israel, after telling us here that walls don't work. And of course, this one here in the Ukraine. Those countries get billions of dollars to secure their borders while ours remains wide open by design. And if you take a look at the bill that they tried to pass, while they said that the true conservatives were peddling conspiracy theories about 5,000 a day would be freely allowed, if you look at it, the text of the bill was even worse. As always, I encourage you, take no one's word, not even mine. Look up these bills and review them for yourself. Ah, yes, had to have been fun there in Kiev. Kiev, I'm not going to call it Kiev. You'll never make me call it Kiev. It was Kiev all my life. I'm not going to switch gears just because the propaganda ministry tells me to. Yes, it had to have been fun in Kiev watching Zelensky sweat it, wondering if he was going to have to go directly to his benefactor. Ah, romance between men, especially on a political scale, and especially when one is compromised to the other. A cuck arrangement, if ever I've seen one, politically and probably physically, if it weren't for the fact that Joe Biden is old and incapable. Now, unfortunately, Zelensky couldn't go to his benefactor directly because his benefactor had problems of his own. You see, the special counsel's report came out this week. The good news for Biden is he won't be prosecuted. The bad news for Biden is why he won't be prosecuted. The special counsel laid out in detail that the reason why they were not pressing charges, I want to make it abundantly clear, as they did, that Biden did commit crimes. Biden did improperly handle and store documents. Biden did not only have, but peddled classified information up to and including SCI information. We'll get into that a little bit later. One of the highest classifications possible. Yes, he did all these things. Special counsel laid it out and says so, but they're not going to prosecute. Why? Because he is a doddering old man with memory lapses, and the special counsel's report went into those lapses in detail. They basically told us what anyone with eyes and two brain cells to rub together have known since before the man took office. He is an addled cadaver. I used to say that the worst case and most egregious case of elder abuse on the planet was Sharon Osbourne. I would have to say now, in good conscience, that that title goes to Joe Biden. But since the report came out, well, we're right back to Orwellsville again. I can always tell who a person is politically and mentally by how they use the word Orwellian in context and what they apply it to. And one of the things I'm always able to ascertain accurately from those things is who actually read the books. You see, we're being told that he is not competent to stand trial. His brain is mush. He can't remember what he had for breakfast this morning, and as a result is incompetent to stand trial. And yet, we are told to believe that he is 100% cognitively sharp enough to be running a country. This one wouldn't mind so much if it was Ukraine, but this one. I think it's very telling, not only that people are able to double down on this, actually believe it, but here's what I found when I was doing my show prep today. Did you know that if you enter into Google the words Biden confused, it'll pull you up a whole slew of photographs. That's right. I entered Biden confused because I wanted this look, the one we're all used to. This is the one that's become the fodder for so many memes. But as it turns out, there are literally dozens just like that. I only picked out my favorites, this one being the meme maker. And then there was this one where he can't seem to remember where he left his car keys. And where was that Corvette that was parked next to the classified documents? And this one where he decides he's going to scratch the other side of his head. He's very, very puzzled. And you guys know good and well that if he were your grandfather, you would take away his car keys. So there is no way that they will trust him with the nuclear codes. And being a crane operator and having some frequency on construction sites, my personal favorite was this one. Yeah, he's got his hard hat on backwards. Anybody who's ever worked construction or any 7-year old with a Tonka Toys construction playset knows that that hard hat is on backwards. But it didn't stop the dutiful fact checkers from jumping in to correct it. This is how desperate the propaganda ministry is. Dovetailing on last week's sermon, never, ever, ever forget that they are salesmen. They are trying to sell you something. What they're trying to sell you is a narrative. That narrative is that this man is 100% sharp enough to be running a country when we all know better. In this particular case, Snoke jumped in and said, no, in fact, it was not on backwards, and they got beaten down so badly by the rest of the internet that they finally had to correct their corrections. And when they corrected it, it was still in a shuffle along kind of way. Well, the bill is backwards, but the guy deliberately set up his suspension system like that. So while technically it is on backwards, please stop. Please just stop. This is how they feel about your intelligence. The good news is this: beyond having the problems of this level of confusion and this level of confusion, and well, I'm going to scratch my other head level of confusion, and then the I'm going to wear my hat backwards, the propaganda ministry is failing and failing badly. And the last compendium of surveys, take a look at this. 62% of the American public that were interviewed had major concerns about his mental and physical health. Now, the physical health is an afterthought. I mean, for all we know, he's healthy as a horse outside of his cranium. Maybe he's certainly got a healthier heart than Dick Cheney. He's certainly got a healthier stomach than, oh, I don't know, Chris Christie. But I digress. Major concerns. You know, this is about his mental health. And 14% more had moderate concerns. Let's do the math there, people. 76% of the polled American electorate doubt that this man is sharp. So, what did the press machine turn around and do? They doubled down. We'll be going into more detail later. It was the most bizarre thing I ever could have seen. I truly thought they were setting him up to 25th Amendment his ass, but no, they doubled down. He's still ready to run a country. And then they go on to insist that this man, even running for office, being allowed to run for office, is an existential threat to democracy. Well, if it was just as easy as two different candidates, you could see why one team would try to prevent the other from running. But the Democratic National Committee, over the last 2 weeks, major stories have surfaced, has put pressure on third party candidates, up to and including this gentleman, RFK Jr. Now, you can feel about RFK Jr. any old way you want to. I'm not going to hold it against you. There's plenty of stuff I agree with the man on, and plenty of stuff in his policy set with which I find great objection. But the point is this: if this guy running is an existential threat to democracy and anyone else running is an existential threat to democracy, then the supposition has only one possible meaning, and that is that this cadaver running unopposed is the only way to save democracy. Now, again, getting back to this little arrangement, maybe this is exactly the kind of democracy that they're talking about for the United States when they talk about saving democracy, when they talk about seizing all media outlets and eventually suspending elections and sending troops into churches to silence priests because they don't support the war. That's the kind of democracy we see in the Ukraine, and I think that's exactly what they have in store for us here. But right now we're in uncharted territory, people. I don't know which way it's going to go. Mencken had a word on that, though, about the nature of democracy, because democracy, let's look at the etymology of that word. The root of that word is mob rule, going back to the original Greek. Remember what Ben Franklin said about democracy? Democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting over what's for dinner. What Mencken said about it was democracy is the theory that the common people know what they want and deserve to get it, good and hard. We don't remove our heads from our asses. We better be careful what we wish for in the long term for democracy and representative government, because in the final analysis, what we're wishing for, we just might get it. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and now that we're back into the workforce, certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind, and they are guaranteed to forcibly stretch open that maw to its maximum extent with an equine speculum, if necessary, and choke you with a turgid, veiny dose of truth cock. Welcome back, boys and girls. It is time once again for the Sunday sermon. Close quarters today. Thanks for hanging out for the opener. These are the new digs for a couple of weeks. What do you think? See who all's on board, man. Everybody in for the drum roll. Here we go. Just like the old days where there used to be nothing but a mobile phone sitting here recording the sound and everything else, and the laptop was just for show and for bullet points, man. But we're here and we're doing it. Let me play that music down just a little bit, man. That speaker's seen better days. Getting a little rumbly on the low end. We are here, folks, in North Salt Lake. That's right, North Salt Lake City, Utah. Getting ready for another crane gig. It's going to keep me busy for a little bit. I am settling in. This is the spot. You know how I like it, man. I like those little dives. I like those little hovels. No creature comforts. Keep it very Spartan. Remind you of who you are at the core. And, not putting on airs, getting all highfalutin and such. But we're here, man. And for the next foreseeable future, number of podcasts, we are going to be coming at you live for the sermon from this little dig. I'm going to see what I can do about hanging some pipe and drape and putting some witty banners back behind me, man, make it a little more entertaining. But in the meantime, between time, here we are, and we made it, and I'm glad that you guys made it. I'm going to do a quick roll call real quick. Oh, look at that. We got Ryan on board. How about that, man? Yeah, I just want to say real quick, as we open, as always, with the bumper music. The bumper music from a gut-stomping rock and roll band called Red Desert. They are from the smoldering embers and ruins of the once great American city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. Every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. Some people would question the wisdom of traveling all the way to Utah just to run a big Tonka toy on oilfield refinery turnaround for a few weeks. But here we are. See what we got. The original Cinder Sister herself, Miss Emmy. Happy to have you on board. Oh, yeah, you notice I'm clean shaven. Talk about that in a minute. I'm not a fan. Not a fan of that clean shaven look, not one little bit. Brother Bill Wade, very nice to see you, man. Glad you made it, as always. Let's see who else is on board. It's one of the usual suspects. George Williams, man. Why waste time catching a stupid ball? Come listen to the rep. I appreciate you, brother. I wish that more people shared that sentiment, but I got a feeling it's going to be a hard sell, man. And I understand that. Who am I to compete with a bunch of illiterate felons making hundreds of millions of dollars a year and some two-bit pop star who's being used as a CIA psyop? I'm not saying I necessarily believe that, but it is a funny little thing to play around with. The mighty, mighty Stone on board. Glad you made it, Stone. Good to see you. Been a while. Bones, say bones. This is my sports. Same, brother, same. I like it, man. I like that. That is being Bone, man. We got that connection. It's like that popped up because this is, man, politics, social commentary. You know, this sort of stuff. The real meat of it. It's my pro sports. The way some people follow the Kansas City Chiefs, I follow Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald. The way that some people, can rip off sports statistics. I'll give you a historical breakdown of the Norman invasion of England in 1066. On the other hand, if you ask me what I had for breakfast, I got nothing. So that's the nature of my brain injury. Deacon Mark on board. Where are the cheerleaders? Wish I had some. I could do some with some sock puppets, man, but then it gets to an awkward kind of territory because I didn't know it was that kind of party when it showed up. But I'm happy to have you here, man. Deacon Mark on board, no doubt from the porch or hanging out with some other ruffians and miscreants that we all know and love, which would also be cool. Brother Ryan, glad you made it. 80% of that bill had nothing to do with the border. Believe me, brother, we're gonna do the deep dive on that one. We are doing the deep dive on that one. Nothing whatsoever to do with the border. It was a war bill.
The border thing was just a setup for the psyop to say, "Oh, look, it's the Republicans' fault. The border's open," but that's something else entirely. I'm only here for the hate speech, Jude. You and everybody else, you just found the spine to admit it. And everybody's here for the hate speech. Brother Dennis, good to see you, man. Doug Turtle, good evening to you, brother. Glad you made it out. Let me see what we got. I do own an equine speculum. Why am I not shocked by that? Equine speculum, one of those ovipositor, and right now I think the old lady's watching this and she's just like, why do I leave them unsupervised? Why do I leave them unsupervised? Ryan, I have questions. Emmy, you behave, young lady. Because I know you behave. All right, I'm saying. I really don't need the answers. Let my imagination run wild. And this is why Emmy can't be left unsupervised. Jesus, man, I swear. If I could get, if I know I do this to myself. I know I do this to myself. It's my own fault. Leave myself out there in the lurch. Going to go ahead and fade that music down. Once again, Red Desert, older, no wiser. Um, those guys have been really, really cool, man. They really have been because I've been running this as bumper music for as long as we have been doing this damn thing, back from the early days of the COVID cast, and they've been really cool. They've let me run this without any use of copyright. I didn't have to sign anything. I don't have to pay them licensing, anything like that. They were just, I sent them. I sent them a video. I was like, "This is what we do. We get into some political stuff. We'd rather or not. We can switch." They're like, "Nah, man, go ahead, run with it." And man, the way I even found those guys, it was so weird. It was a documentary on van life, because apparently dating back all the way to the 1970s, there is still a large and rabid culture of the van life people here in the United States. And it was on the soundtrack, man. It was like early on in a documentary. I was just kind of checking it out, and this gut stomping jam comes on. I was like, that was freaking cool, man. So I got online, I looked it up. I was like, find the soundtrack and everything. I was like, right on. And so I downloaded that track and I checked out the rest of their catalog, and all of their stuff, man, good. I mean, again, we could get into Citra. Technically, it's not doom, bro. It's like desert stoner with like an edge of slut. Shut the fuck up, man. It's just some kick-ass rock and roll. So roll with it. Anyway, Red Desert. Older No Wiser is the name of the track. Really cool, really cool. Lust Queen was another track off of that album that I really dug. Anyway, download some of their stuff, buy some of their merch, help them out, because they've been cutting the Reverend a break for a few years, and we certainly appreciate the help. A couple of sponsor shout outs. Let me just get out of the way real quick. Of course, Roman, and his and his lovely wife Carrie, and Roxy and Allie, and all the beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. Check out From Dork to Pimp Daddy from Roman Riva. It is available on Amazon, Kindle edition, all that good stuff. It is a story of his journey from just a regular old guy to a fellow who has beautiful naked women paying him money for the privilege of having him paint them on canvas. I mean, maybe he does some body painting on the side. That's something you could take up with Roman. Not my party, but go for it. But check out opiumtales.com. He's doing some beautiful watercolor work over there. They're the erotic pinups and portraits people. And he's one of my oldest and dearest friends, and been a supporter of the program since we got this thing started. And don't forget the testosterone driven commentary, because like like Jude said, he's only here for the hate speech. Also, got to give my shout out to the Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison. Dusty, the pitmaster over there at Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Dude, I can't leave you alone for 2 seconds. Damn it. The only legit barbecue in the Northwest. They're going to be out there with the Viking Longship, which is a great big smoker trailer, getting things set up. Look them up. They're on all the major social media platforms. And Dusty actually does some video one-offs that are pretty freaking hilarious, man. So, and again, good friends of mine. They've been friends of the program for a long time. They've helped me out immensely on a personal level, and the product is amazing. I'm telling you, dude. I am like North Carolina by way of Texas. I am not easily impressed by barbecue. These guys are the freaking truth, man. So, Nordic Smoke Barbecue, only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. All right, guys. Before we go any further, I just want to take a couple of seconds here because as we were going to air, I just got word through social media network that there has been a there's been a mass shooting incident at Lakewood Church. Now, I know when I say Lakewood Church, it's going to polarize a whole lot of people, and I totally get that. I have my own problems with Osteen. I have my own problems with Prosperity Gospel and every other thing like that. But for somebody to walk into a house of worship and shoot the place up, details are pretty scant right now. We don't have body counts. We don't have any kind of background on the shooter. The only thing that we know is that he walked in very early in the Spanish speaking service. They have two big services that they do. One is in English right there at noon, and they have another one they start at 2 o'clock, which is the Spanish speaking service. All that we know is the guy walked in early into the 2 p.m. Spanish speaking service and just opened fire inside the building. Again, however you may choose to feel about Osteen, and chances are I probably agree with you. We're talking about people who, if you were in a house of worship, it is because you were seeking, right? Um, if you were in a house of worship, that is your peace, right? Whether or not you know, you know what? No, I'm not gonna parse here. I don't care what religion you happen to find strength in. Okay, if that is the source of your faith, that is the source of your strength. And if you are going into a house of worship, right? You think of yourself as going into a place of solitude. I mean, man, even even the Highlanders don't chop each other's heads off on holy ground. Come on, man, this is an archetype that we can all get behind. It's regrettable, man. Deeply, deeply regrettable. We don't have any details on it, but if you guys would just, take maybe 5 or 10 seconds, um, just offer up some prayers and some energy for any of the people that might have lost their lives in that incident, and for any of the people that may have to carry very, very horrible memories for the rest of their life behind that incident. At some point, holy ground, Highlander. At some point, some things are supposed to be off limits, but that's not the world that we live in now. I don't justify what that. I don't justify what that little maggot did in Charleston, South Carolina. Walking in with a Rhodesian flag and shooting up a black church. The guy's a scumbag. He's a piece of shit. You know, nobody's making excuses for anybody here. Nobody's taking one side over another. That's a church, bro. Leave it alone. You know, it's just sad. It's just really, really sad that this is the world that we live in now. While we're here, though, I do want to make the point that while it is regrettable, it is an absolute fact that this is the kind of world that we live in now. If you are a person of faith and you go to church, carry. Period. End of statement. Done. Hopefully, you have gotten with one of my friends like Sonny or Mr. Tom down here. Good to see you, brother. Um, or even Doug, or who any of the tactical guys in my crowd. Get with them, do some training, man. Learn how to use that weapon. It is a drag that we live in the kind of a world where we have to think about packing a firearm in a house of worship, but it is a fact, no matter how unpleasant that fact may be. Churches, if you are a representative of a church, there are any number of people out there offering classes now for security personnel for your church. People who have spent time developing programs specifically for that unpleasant event. And again, what does it say that we even have to plan for this sort of thing? But that's the world that we live in now. So look at the expertise of people who have done the work, and make it to where, God forbid, anything like this ever happen in your place of worship. The headline that we're reading starts off with mass shooting attempted, perpetrator dead, no injuries. because that's an outcome I think we all could live with. So, tragic things going on at Lakewood. I'm very sorry for any of the people who are a part of that. So, if you guys would, man, just take a few seconds. If you know, if you're a person of faith, offer up a silent prayer. If you're of a secular nature, just send some good vibes. Whatever it is, or even if again, if you're on a secular path, maybe just take a second to reflect for yourself. How vulnerable am I? Right? I'd never be in a church because I don't go to church. All right, cool. But these kind of people are walking around, and what have you done to prepare yourself for it? Just use it as a moment to reflect, if nothing else. This is the kind of world that we live in. And George, you're right, man. Evil, it is. It's everywhere, man. It's everywhere. I take no joy in that. And all of my gun people here, we know, man. You carry that gun because you're out there looking for a fight. No, no, no. I pray to God it never comes to that. I literally pray to God it never comes to that. But that's the thing. I saw an interesting meme earlier in the week. You know, you never know when the day is going to come where you're going to need that gun. That's something that the bad guy decides, and he sends you a little note at the last minute. A lot of times people get the memo too late or they don't have the skills to cope with it. Anyway, didn't want to get off on that tear, but this is the world that we live in, though. We'll be dealing with that a little more later on in the sermon when we get on to uh, some of the things that we're going to be discussing today. In the meantime, between time, what do you say we try to pick it back up, get a little bit festive for the time being, and you guys already know where we're headed with that. That's right, boys and girls, the opening segment. We're talking about Ryan's rabbit hole. I don't know. Can you guys hear the applause? Can you guys hear it? Just let me know in the comments if you can hear it or not, because I can never tell, you know, with our primitive sound system and no production. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but imagine a thunderous roar of applause if you can't actually hear the sound effect. Yeah, man. But the opening segment, Ryan's rabbit hole. We like taking it down the rabbit hole, man. One of the things that Ryan and I bonded over early on was that we both are repositories of useless information. Uh, Definitely murder, play a game of Trivial Pursuit with, because one or the other of us will know a little bit of something about damn near every damn thing. Um, and every week we take it a little bit off the beaten path. We try to expose you to something. Sometimes it's just an interesting phenomena that you might not have heard of. Sometimes it's a historical figure. Sometimes it's a historical event. Sometimes it's a weird conspiracy. And sometimes when Ryan feels like really making me work for it, we go down the rabbit hole and we get into some esoteric stuff. And this, thankfully, is not one of those weeks. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and you realize that you knew something about what you were talking about? And that thing that you were talking about is something that most people don't know anything about. And you knowing this much, you were feeling pretty good about yourself. And then you start talking to someone and you realize that you have come to the wrong party, man, because you're on that minor league level. Every time we get off into the esoteric stuff with Ryan, I, I'm out of my depth, bro. I mean, like I can hang with him, and I think he would back me up on that. Like damn near any other thing, conspiracy history. You get off into the esoteric stuff, the quantum stuff, um, and I just sit back and I revel in it, try to expand my knowledge base a little bit. Thankfully, this is not one of those weeks, guys. This is not one of those weeks. This week's rabbit hole, we are going into an interesting thing from pre-internet days called the Dodleston messages. I want to go ahead and give you the term. I'm going to go ahead and spell it for you. Dodleston, Dodleston messages. And it's from Dodleston, Cheshire, which is where the event took place. Now, it started back in the early 1980s, where some reporters for the BBC had left a computer on. They had one of the microcomputers. Now, keep in mind, early 80s. So let's figure, I don't know, 80, let's go 83, maybe 83 to 84. Any of you who were alive back then, remember what computers were like, right? Your monitor was the size of a small television set. It was huge, weighed about 120 pounds. Okay, not that much, but big, heavy, weighty TV set. And it sat on top of this massive steel box with like these big, elaborate keyboards plugged into it. I mean, they were huge. Here's what else they were solo units. The only kinds of networks that really existed back then were networks within a specific organization. Example, I had an aunt who worked for a North Carolina newspaper in Raleigh, Durham, and they had a network where each employee, each reporter could enter their stuff, and one command sent it into a box where it was saved, and another one set it up the channel where uh, it would go to an editor. And true Bart stories here. I hit the wrong command, and I was, because I was young, and I'm there with my aunt who is a reporter, and I decided I was going to play reporter. And so I typed out this long, opinionated article because I had hours there to kill. She's basically babysitting me there at work. And I typed up this long, elaborate article on gun control. And I remember the numbers and the letters because I was supposed to hit 240 EN, which would have saved it to her save box, right? Instead, I hit 240 SE, which sent it upstairs to one of her editors. And I remember that editor coming down and having a word or two with my aunt Jackie. He was not thrilled, uh, and when she pointed out that it was her adolescent nephew who had actually written it, um, he complimented me on my writing, but because obviously it was a pro gun article, because even then, right, uh, he complimented me on my writing. The upstairs editor complimented me on my writing. He just clearly it didn't fit their editorial format, which is why he was coming down to have. It was like, this is not your kind of material, Jackie. Like, what are you sending me up here? I can't work with this. Rah, 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 rah. Actually, that was my nephew, and I'm over in the corner like, hi. True Bart stories. Anyway, that was the only networks that they had back then. Sorry, little divergence. That was the only kind of computer networks they had back then were inside, companies, their little individual network. There was no internet per se. Yes, there were BBSs, and yes, there were connections, and you had ARPANET and all of these things, but the internet as we know it then did not exist. So imagine leaving your little 2-ton computer on overnight in 1984, and you come in, and this is verbatim what it had written. Ken, Deb, Nick. True are the nightmares of a person that fears. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. Turn, pretty flower, turn towards the sun, for you shall grow and sow, but the flower reaches too high and withers in the burning light. Get out your bricks. Pussycat, pussycat went to London to seek fame and fortune. Faith must not be lost, for this shall be your redeemer. Well, now we would look at that and be like, okay, come on, who accessed our, but this is pre-internet. Nobody had access, and they weren't hooked to a network. So they just left their computer on overnight, and they come in, and this big long poem was written. And of course, you can make the case that this person did it, that person was a prank on another one, but they sent it back, and nothing was thought of it until they went back out to the farm in 1985. This was with a completely different computer that, again, none of this was hooked on to a network. None of these computers were networked. I'll let you do the rest of the looking, but there was a second, and in fact, a third series of messages. The purpose of the rabbit hole is for you to go dig, okay? So I'm not just going to lay it out in spoiler alerts for you, but there was a second set of messages that was written in what amounted to Old English or Middle English. And apparently, the person who was writing this was in some sort of time flux from the 1500s. Then there was a third set that was allegedly from a time flux of someone in the year 2109. It's pretty deep and it's pretty bizarre, but it's definitely worth the look. Okay, the Dodleston messages. Do keep in mind, this was in an age before there were computer networks. So for somebody to pull off a prank this elaborate would have taken some doing. Now, I will play devil's advocate with a counterpoint. I will play devil's advocate, well, with a counterpoint that also kind of plays into the case. There was a book that I read, little pulp sci-fi book that I read called In the Country of the Blind. In fact, Dennis Weimer's ears might have perked up at that because he's read every pulp sci-fi novel on the planet. But it was called In the Country of the Blind. I want to say the author's name was Flynn. Could be wrong about that. Country of the Blind. And what it proposed was an organization called the Babbage Society. Charles Babbage, way back when, centuries ago, developed the first computer. Okay, punch cards, divots, generating mechanical processes, and on and on and on. And the hypothesis behind this sci-fi novel was that they hid Babbage's technology, that the Illuminati, for lack of a better word, had taken Babbage's technology and were light years ahead of everyone else. Oh yeah, no mention. Oh no, I said that. Okay, right, exactly. The 2109 predictions, and that's where I'm trying to get them to dig on their own. Those predictions that they made from the 2109 guy, that actually happened. Okay, like the predictions that 2109 guy made totally came to pass. You're going to have to dig for that, but that actually happened. The middle section that looked like it was coming from the 1500s, it was written in Middle English slash Old English, right? That's what people hark away from that. But when the third set of information came true, again, the Dodleston messages, guys, I want you to dig on this because this is really interesting stuff. Okay, the 2109 messages, several of the things that he predicted in those messages did actually come to fruition. Again, getting back to the plot of the other novel, was that you have people who are light years ahead because they had that hidden technology. And just like the US military, if they show us one thing, they've got something that's 20 years past that. If they show us microcomputers, they already have quantum computers that nobody knows about, this sort of thing. I say all that to say this. The Dodleston messages, considering that the third set that came through from the time flux guy from 2109, several of those things did actually come to pass, right? Now, again, we could take the Nostradamus argument if you make it vague enough, but no, these were pretty specific. To see how specific, you're going to have to dig, but some of those things did actually come true. Uh, so again, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's the ultimate elaborate prank. Maybe the guy is setting up a boost to write his own sci-fi novel behind what might have been, and we're essentially doing the creative thinking for him. Who knows? But it's definitely entertaining. It'll definitely get the wheels turning a little bit. The Dodleston messages. The Dodleston messages. Dodleston, from Dodleston, Cheshire, which is where those BBC reporters were first camped out when the first set of messages came through. So, a little sip of liquid enthusiasm there, getting a little dried out. So, that was part one of the rabbit hole. Part two of the rabbit hole is going to get a little more entertaining, and it's going to lead into a more detailed hello, sis. Nice to see you. Glad you could make it by. You guys have heard me say that between the scriptures and the Stoics, that's where I find my spirituality. It's where I find my center now. Who is, right off the top of your head, the most famous Stoic that you can remember? If I ask you to name one Stoic philosopher, what the first name that pops into your head is, right? And it'll end in us. Because it always ends in us. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. Um, Okay, Thucydides. Okay, it doesn't always end in us. All right, whatever. But you get. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Marcus Aurelius. You know it. Damn it, Tom. I want you to know I'm virtually choking you with my force powers right now, with my Sith Lord energy. The answer to every question. There is a there's a drinking game that didn't last very long. It was the Tom Hollyby drinking game, where anytime Musashi was named, or there was any reference to Musashi's work, you had to take a shot. And he tried that first with a class of guys at a tactical range. There were 27 guys. 13 of them died of alcohol poisoning. The rest had to be hospitalized. So that drinking game didn't last. Musashi. Damn it. I'm not gonna entertain it. I'm not gonna entertain it right now. But yeah, you think of Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius. Anybody know about his old lady? Faustina? Anybody know about that? Faustina led a tortured life. The woman definitely led a tortured life. Before she got married off to Marcus Aurelius, she was supposed to be married off to two other Roman emperors, and in fact, Marcus Aurelius was her adopted brother and her genetic cousin when she was thrown into that arranged marriage with him. I've heard her described as a political survivalist. A lot of people would use the word whore, uh, which, while accurate by definition, um, doesn't exactly speak to her motivations. She lived in a very tumultuous political time. She slept with a lot of people. She slept with senators. She slept with aristocrats and had, quite famously, an affair with a gladiator. Now, Marcus Aurelius, being the Stoic philosopher, and this came to me as I was going through one of my Stoic boards when it comes to reacting to situations, but I felt like it was the perfect segue to one of the things that we talked about last week about gender roles and how they are assigned and who holds the power and how they hold that power. Marcus Aurelius was not to be trifled with, either as an emperor or as a philosopher. He knew about all of these affairs. This one with the gladiator troubled him particularly. He consulted some soothsayers, and the soothsayers came up with a relatively novel solution for it. He basically had both of them. He had Faustina and her lover summoned to his chambers and basically told them, get it on. Both of them quite taken aback, but eventually nature took its course. Oh, what? Your old man's going to do the cuck thing? I'm going to get to bang his old lady while he watches? Cool, man. Is he going to be stroking in the corner and everything? Only that wasn't what happened. He got mounted up on Faustina about balls deep, and he was promptly executed. Now, whether or not it was Marcus that did it, or some of his attendant bodyguards, or some of the Praetorian, or whatever, remains unclear, depending on what historical account you believe. But what everybody agrees on is the fact that they were getting down, right? They were doing the beast of two backs, and one of those backs suddenly had some swords in it. And what Marcus Aurelius proceeded to do in a fantasy that in a fantasy that Ryan and I put together probably couldn't top on our best day. He had her lover murdered, forced her to bathe in the blood of this murdered lover, and then proceeded to get his own groove on. Wow. And Ryan, before you even comment, because I know you're going to, I'm not saying we wouldn't have thought of it. I'm not saying that under the right set of circumstances, we might not have even worked out the logistics of it. I'm just saying, probably wouldn't have gone through with it for now. Leave it, right? Just leave it, right? Just leave it. Because I know. And right now, no, I can hear you in the crane of that cab right now. Leave it. Just leave it. It's it ain't easy being a freak. All right. Anyway, let's go ahead and segue back Taylor Swift to the old days. I like it. Um, women, women in their roles, women in their strengths, women in the West. Okay, there is a lot to be made of this supposed war on women that exists in the West. Now, when I say the West, man, I'm talking about the values of what has come to be recognized as Western civilization. And I hold that those go all the way back to the Greeks and to the Romans, uh, all of the cultures of Northern Europe, right? Before and after convergence from paganism to Christianity. Women were greatly empowered in a lot of pagan societies, but they were also empowered within the confines of the West under Roman Catholicism. You can pick and choose verses all that you want, but to me, that is the same as saying all religions are equally violent. Well, if you're going to say that in doctrine, that is one thing. To say it in practice is something completely different. Okay. You can say that Islam and Christianity are equally violent. In doctrine, if we're pulling things out of the Old Testament, yes, you can make that case. If we are making the comparison in body counts, however, that is disingenuous at best. You are being intentionally deceptive, even if that intentional deception is even deceived yourself. And of course, there's at least one guy out there go, "What about the Crusades?" First of all, I didn't realize that we were having this conversation in the 1400s. But second of all, even the Crusades were a defensive reaction to Muslim incursion. So just spare me. Point being, gender roles have always been defined and separated within the confines of Western civilization, whether it was under pagan rule or whether it was under pagan culture, or whether it was under Catholic rule or Catholic culture or any of the Abrahamic religions that worked their way into European cultural understanding. There has always been a separation of those gender roles. It has always been clearly defined. None of this is to project that there is any weakness or that any one deserves more than the other. When I hear people talk about the pagan societies that were matriarchal in nature and how it was all just love and peace pipes and orgies in the fields, it's horseshit. I know immediately the first thing I need to say to this person is pick up a history book. Okay? A real one, not the treatise that your college women's studies professor gave you. You need to do a deeper dive. Matriarchal societies, as a general rule, do not function in the long term because of that separation of gender roles. And right now, there are women out there that are howling at me, and I don't care because, unfortunately, you guys saw what I have down here in the bottom corner. I am spitting hate facts at dataphobes. And if you are denying the verifiable truth of the statements that I'm making, you are a dataphobe. Since you guys are so fond of putting phobe at the end of anything that you want to deride, you guys are dataphobes. I'm giving you documented facts. If you're afraid of that or that bothers you, you're a dataphobe. The fact that I'm making this statement that goes against your particular cultural narrative, but it is factual and irrefutable, that is the hate fact. We went over all of these. We went over all of these last week, hate fact, and you're going to have to play some serious intellectual gymnastics to get there, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'm going to spit the hate facts at the dataphobes and sit back and laugh at the candle pissers. Have you guys been able to get any use out of that? We brought it up. The gender roles have always been defined. They have had to be modified on the fly in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas. People look back to, let's just look, I'm going to keep it within the last 2 centuries, okay, or within the last century and a half, just to keep it current, okay. Let's say within the last 150 years, and we've had to redefine several times over the courses, mostly due to war, not so much in World War One because we got in late to the game and we at least had a manufacturing base at that point. Um, in World War One, we had to realign everything because all of the military age men were overseas fighting a European war that was bankrolled by certain factions. You know, hats, noses. Oh, anyway, um, point being, all the military age men, all of the good breeding age men, all of the good breeding stock were overseas fighting wars we had no business being a part of. We had to redefine cultural gender roles then. After the war, women's suffrage. Women's suffrage. Okay, yes, it's a wonderful thing. Definitely need to give women the right to vote because all creatures are created equal and we all have the same facilities for critical thought and we all certainly can rationally think through and process facts and aren't totally controlled by emotion. Women's suffrage, great thing. Um, I'm not going to get into what some more extreme elements of the trad movement would say with regard to that. What I will remind you of, though, is the first major political contribution that American culture had handed to it by women's suffrage was prohibition. But hey, ladies, way to be controlled by your emotions. It's cool, man. You thought it all the way through. But we still accorded them that level of what's the small e word? What's the small e word? I'm holding it right here in my hand. Equality. Did we not? Did we not? For good or for ill, we gave them the right. We accorded them the right. Some people would say, well, constitutional rights are given from God. God gave them that right. The government just finally acknowledged it. Okay. Okay. That's cool too. I have no problem with that. God gave them the right to have an equal part in the representative government process. Notice I said representative government process and not democracy because we know what happens in democracy. Although it became closer to a democracy once we gave them that part in the representative process. I say all that to say this. They were accorded the right. They were accorded the power. And it didn't terribly upset the balance of things. I mean, except for that whole, millions of dollars in federal law enforcement, people dying of alcohol poisoning and the gang wars in Chicago and all that. I mean, it really didn't shake us up that bad, the whole prohibition thing. World War II comes along. Hey, Tommy, good to see you, man. Good to see you, Tommy. And Emmy, damn it, don't encourage him. You be nice. Hush. Um, World War II came along. At this point, we had no real manufacturing base at the beginning of the war. We were fighting the most powerful military machine on the planet at the time, Nazi Germany. And because it was the Axis powers, we were also fighting the naval and air forces and the land forces eventually of the Empire of Japan. This was a formidable adversary, and we had nothing in place to make it work. All of the men that normally worked in the factories got pulled in, yanked out, sent to war. The women had to step up and work in the factories. And you know what, ladies? You did a fine effing job. Fantastic. Y'all stepped up to that challenge. You even had your own fisting porn propaganda poster, man. We can do it. Right? Rosie the Riveter. Y'all made it work. Y'all made it work. Western civilization. You know what? I'm not going to make that argument because that leads off into a whole tangential thing about how Europe would have looked and whether or not, the tiny hat crowd. I'm not even going to get into that. Point being, representative government, such as it was saved largely by the efforts of those women in the manufacturing bases. And this upset those gender roles culturally. Why? Because the women, what did the propaganda poster? You remember from last week? We can do it. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. What did Chris Rock say about that? Just because you can do something don't mean it's to be done. You can drive a car with your feet if you want to. Don't make it an effing good idea. Y'all can, ladies, you can. You can actually step up in a pinch and learn how to work rivet guns and learn how to turn wrenches and learn how to do all of those things. Here's the thing, when the men came back and y'all left those jobs, there were men to do those jobs. You want to know what men can't do very well? And you know what? Some of the men are getting ready to bristle at me here, and I don't care because again, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why do I not care? Why do I not care? Hate fact. It's a hate fact. I'm not hating on my own gender here. Men cannot give birth, in spite of what college professors are absurdly telling us to our faces in congressional hearings now. Men cannot give birth. We also don't menstruate. Men cannot give birth. You want to know what else men can't do? We can, rather, just like women can, if pushed, go into the factories, learn how to climb poles and fix telephone and power lines. They can. You know what men can do but aren't built for it? Homemaker. Some of y'all had single dads. One guy in particular who might be watching, and you know who you are, 7X, who had the who had one of the best dads I could think of, right? Who did raise those boys and raised and built a home and worked full time and all these other things. He's a notable exception and a good one. And thank God that my boy 7X had him, right? But that's not what we're built for genetically. It is not a cultural construct. It is not a social construct. We have certain genetic inclinations. It is why we're still alive at this point. Okay? You can make allowances for departures from the norm, but you have to admit that the norm exists. And you have to understand the reason why the norm exists. There is a reason why men are into things and women are more into people. There is a reason why men tend to gravitate towards logic and women are more ruled by emotion. All of these things figure into our genetic makeup. This is not to disparage or sing the praises of anyone. This is to say we're different and there are reasons why this thing rolls the way that it does. Here is the way that leftism and communism and their extensions, second and third generation feminism, get it twisted. Getting back to the norm. There is always going to be a balance, and that balance needs to lean one way or the other. It leaned a little this way, women got the vote. Then it leaned back a little this way, we had to repeal prohibition. Then it leaned back a little this way, women had to run the factories. And then the war ended, and it leaned a little this way, and the men came back home. And you know what the women did? It was awesome. This is why I love women, American women in particular, women of European descent in particular. Y'all stepped right up to the mantle. Y'all took on that challenge. And when it was over and the men came home, where'd y'all go? Right back to the house. Right back to the house. Took care of the house. Raised all those new kids that y'all are cranking out because mama ain't got no eggplant in a while and now daddy's home from the war. We're going to knock out some babies. I went right back and you stepped up to that mantle too, and y'all crushed it. Y'all crushed it. In a lot of ways, culturally, 1950s and early 60s were some of the best times in the history of this country because of that. because we proved that we could lean one way or the other, but that the balance prevailed. The balance prevailed. The balance prevailed. And then the people that we were fighting in the 50s and the 60s said, we can't beat them from outside. We got to beat them from inside. And the way to do that is to throw that balance off. What did I say women are ruled by? Emotions. And what's funny is there's women listening to this right now going, you can't say that, and not realize that you're making my point. Oh, I'm going to get big heat off of this one. Big heat. My boy's already pissed off at me. Old lady's already pissed off at me. But again, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. But y'all need to be clear on what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have the masculine energy without the feminine. You cannot have the feminine energy without the masculine. Women cannot do everything men can do. Men cannot be as nurturing. You can learn to be, you can be framed into a box and do it in a marginal way. On a good day, you'll be hitting about 70% of the efficiency that a woman can do in her sleep. We're not built for it, guys. We're not. Here's the difference. You ask any guy, they'll tell you that. They'll tell you point blank. Oh, what, you saying you could be a homemaker? No, I couldn't be a homemaker. You kidding me, man? Doing nothing but washing dishes and chasing after kids all that? No, man, I couldn't do that. I got to be out working. Guys will admit that shit. Tell a woman she can't do what a man can do. Ladies, I'm going to take this one to you directly, and you're not going to like it. They have done everything they can to remove masculine energy. And the very first thing that they did was try to remove that masculine energy. Why? Because masculine energy, one of those things that we are genetically hardwired to do, is to fight and protect. If you had a generation of hard men, and I don't mean just gym bros, I'm talking hard men that had read Aristotle. I'm talking strong men that had read Thucydides about a society that has its a society that separates its warriors from the scholars. You guys wonder why I keep coming back to that. A generation of hard men would never have let this happen. But we let ourselves assume the feminine role and be subsumed. Maybe that's the wrong word. We made ourselves susceptible to letting our emotions be the control of our thought process rather than an affecting factor of our thought process. That masculine energy died. We went go along to get along. We knew how screwed up this was getting a long, long time ago, and nobody let their nuts drop enough to step up. Getting back to who were we fighting in the 50s and 60s, we're talking about the forces of cultural Marxism that were reflective of actual Marxism. We understood that leftism and communism was an existential threat to the West, and we fought it tooth and nail. But they beat us the way they always beat us, incrementally. A little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. They got rid of that masculine energy to where the will to fight. What are we built for? We're built to fight. We're built to protect. We're built to build, even. They took that right out of us. Don't worry about these, man. Nobody needs these. Just read a book. Just read. We'll do your thinking for you. They've got other brawny guys to do that protecting stuff for you. Oh, building? You want to get your hands dirty? You want calluses? Oh, don't do that. You'd be one of those brainy types. That's where the true power lies in the world to come. And they erased that masculine energy and they got that balance all effed up. Not only did we not resist, we encouraged. Why? Why would we do that? Why? Because here's a place where men are controlled by their emotions. Maybe not so much their emotions, but their biological imperative. Why did in the 60s and the 70s, late 60s going into the early 70s, why did so many men get swept up in supporting feminism? Why? And why are the creepiest of creepers on college campuses still doing it today? Why? Come on, guys, it's going to get them laid. Right, Emmy? Right? Exactly. I know what I can't do. My hubs does. I can't do what you do, but I do my best to get a meal on the end of the table so he has a full belly. Amen, man. Amen. Agree 100% on this. Plus, all you George. Again, that's a discussion. That's a discussion that we could have. What's that? Yep. Exactly, Tom. Exactly. Why? Why did they support it? Because the only way they're going to get laid. And they swept a whole generation going into the 90s. Whatever was left of that masculine urge, the only way you were going to get laid was to be politically correct. And now we've abandoned every bit of masculinity, every bit. And we haven't even realized how bad we've thrown this thing out. Do you know women initiate over 70% of divorces? Why? Why? Because 70% of men are just that bad? No, because of the emotional response. Unpleasant reality, but there it is. That's another factor, Tom. That is another factor for the money. Because we have balanced things in such a way that a woman literally, for no reason at all, no fault divorce is a very, very recent thing in the historical scheme of things. No fault divorce. Woman decides she's done based on emotion. She doesn't have to prove that this man did anything. Doesn't have to prove that the man stepped out on her, the man put hands to her, any of that stuff. Doesn't have to prove anything. She just leaves and she gets to take half of his stuff. And you don't think that's going to have social repercussions further down the line? Guess again, Sparky. And now we've gotten things so twisted. And originally the E. Jean Carroll thing, really, really brought it home for me right now. I want to be abundantly clear. Any man who rapes a woman, legitimately rapes a woman, cut his cock off in public, in front of his kids, beat him to a toothless, crippled pulp within inches of his life, F him up. I have spent literally decades teaching women how not to be victims of rape. Okay, so I don't want to hear from anyone, oh, well, you're enabling this and you're enabling that. No, what I'm saying is that things have gotten catastrophically out of whack. And why it's making men reluctant. These good men that y'all say you can't find anymore. You want to know where they're hiding? They're hiding from you. They're hiding from what second and third generation feminism has thrust upon us as social controls. A woman doesn't need proof anymore. An accusation is just as good as a conviction. They don't need proof anymore. They don't need to demonstrate that any harm was done to them or that the differences are, in fact, irreconcilable before divorcing a man and getting half of it and the kids that he's built a bond with. And you wonder why men don't want to be a part of this anymore. Women can lodge false accusations against someone, clearly false accusations. Do you know that in the state of Washington, I don't know if Texas has gone this way yet, but I can speak specifically for the state of Washington. If you show up on a domestic complaint, someone has to be arrested. Has to be. Doesn't matter what the facts of the case are. Doesn't matter that one party, and I watched this happen on my front porch. All right. Look, I'm glad Aaron's gone. Aaron's a God forgive him. God forgive him. He's trapped in his own stuff. But I will speak truth when it comes to ways that he got raked over the coals by this situation. This woman showed up uninvited in a stolen car, in my driveway on my front porch in the early morning hours, drunk, three sheets to the wind, came kicking in through the door, physically assaulting people. But because she was the first one to call the cops, when the cops showed up, they took Aaron to jail. Even though Aaron, at the time, his leg was in a cast and he was on crutches. She made the complaint. They took him to jail. Oh, yeah, but that's anecdotal, man. Yeah, okay, right. It's totally anecdotal. Not every one of us here doesn't have at least five stories like that. Not every one of us here can just do a 5-second Google search on the data. Because if you want the data, here's the data. Domestically, when it comes to who initiated domestic violence, women and men are about neck and neck. Look it up. 53-47, 52-48, 48-52, 49-51. It goes back and forth every year, but it's dead even in the middle is who initiates, who starts the physical violence. And in cases where weapons are involved, women initiate almost 2-1. I'm not saying poor men, poor men. What I'm saying is, if you wonder why men are reluctant, this is why. But Reverend, I'm not like those women. I shouldn't outright. So you need to start checking your girls. In the same way that guys, you need to start checking your boys. Boys are acting out of line, man. Men are acting out of line. I tell you what, let's go back to boys, right? Let's go back to boys. We have a generation of men that were basically raised by women. What masculinity do we have? What masculinity have we been taught? We've had to look for masculine role models outside the bounds of the family. That's why on the one hand, you get people like Jordan Peterson, who's the default dad for a generation of men raised by women. And on the other hand, you get the Andrew Tates of the world, who are the angry cousin that mom really didn't want you hanging out with because he's a prick, but he's speaking a lot of truth. Sorry, man. Look, miss me with Andrew Tate. I give the man his props. I accord the man his proper respect. He has done very well in life, right? But I don't deify the man. I don't. I'm I'm intellectually honest enough to go, dude, I'm sorry, it's solid. But I can do that for Glenn Greenwald when he gets it right. Hell, man, I can do that for Bernie Sanders on the 2 times out of 100 that he gets something right. What I'm saying is, even if you don't like Andrew Tate, you have nobody to blame for it but yourself, ladies. Generation of men raised by women, and this is what you find. You have eliminated the masculine energy. How come the relationship is never in trouble until the woman decides it's in trouble? Have you thought to ask yourself that? Anybody ever thought, ladies in particular, have you thought to ask yourself that? A man, Andrew Tate, is the Pfizer of masculinity. Prosecution sides with the women 90% of the time. Why would any man want to marry knowing this shit? Absolutely true. And who do they have? And then write and destroy the guy with allegations that are untrue. Exactly. It's just anecdotal. All men are so picked on. You guys go ahead. No, dude, we're not playing a violin for ourselves. Want to know why? We're not allowed to. Culturally, we're not allowed to. And even if we were playing that violin for ourselves, nobody pay attention anyway. What percentage of suicides are men? Hmm? What percentage of people who reach out and find no help because culturally you're not allowed to reach out? You're discouraged from reaching out, and even the men gathered here can't reach out to each other. Tight bonds of a super tight bond between men that most men here will never know. And they had enough, and they can't take it. They put a gun to their head, spill their brains all over the freaking bedroom wall. How did it happen? How did it happen? It was right there the whole time. Nobody cared. Maybe they intimated, hey man, this isn't going well. Hey man, I'm not happy in this. Hey man, could we work on this? But they were in trouble. Maybe they went to their wife and say, hey, look, this is the thing. I want to, this, that, the other. The relationship's not in trouble. Relationship's not in trouble And then one day the woman wakes up and go, I really don't like the way you handle that situation. I'm out of here. And I'm like taking the kids. I'm like half your money. And like everybody's going to be on my side and they're going to think I'm wonderful. And yeah, that's really what's going on, man. That's really what we got into. There are two people to blame for this. Actually, there are hundreds of people to blame for this, but there are two subgroups to blame for this. One, ladies, you did this to yourself. You wanted it all. You wanted all the good parts. You didn't want to take the bad parts. Oh, you want equality, huh? Oh, you want equality? Oh, yeah, because women earn 7 cents on the dollar. First of all, gender pay gap. Miss me with that because again, I'm about data here. Okay, more longer hours, more dangerous jobs. Spare me. It's BS, and even Newsweek had to call it BS. So sit down, shut up. You're wrong. But since we're talking equality, only 40% of CEOs are women, and we need to be equal. Oh, okay. You know what? Only 10% of coal miners are women. I don't see a whole big move for equality there. Only 3% of urban sewer workers are women. But I don't see women marching in the streets with vagina hats to get those sewer worker jobs. Why would men take that on? Because that's the kind of stuff that men do. You realize that all of the West, the standard of living to which we have become accustomed, depends on a network of men who get up every single day, whether they're feeling it or not, whether they're damn near suicidal or not. They get up and they do it. And they're expected to do it and they're expected to shut up about it. You would think a little bit of thank you would be in order, but no. No. We're pissed on every time we try to make a factual accusation or a factual observation, rather. Accusation also works. A factual accusation or observation, like the ones that I've been making here. We get labeled sexist. All the behavior that drives us genetically is pissed on. Lifting weights, eating red meat. Man, what are you, some kind of Cro-Magnon? Well, you know what? Yes. Watch me drag my knuckles, bitch. We have gotten things so screwed up and out of whack and out of balance. And a big part of that is this whole anything men can do, we can do. No, no, you cannot. What percentage of offshore rig workers are women? Somebody look that up for me real quick. I didn't fact check that one before I started. The other two I fact checked before. What percent of offshore oil rig workers? How about those? How about those crab fishermen that keep dying in Alaska? What percentage of those are women? Ain't nothing stopping y'all from taking those jobs. So stop. Men aren't good for anything. Okay. It isn't funny. It isn't cute. It isn't empowering. When it comes out of the mouth of some claptrap, snatch flap entertainer, it is sending a dangerously incorrect message to young women that are coming up. And what it's ultimately doing is eroding the West from the inside out. Remember what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. Because this Handmaid's Tale that you're going to reach for now. Oh, it's supposed, we're all supposed to be in the Handmaid's Tale. We're just supposed to crank out babies, take care of the hat. We're just going to wear a little red. Stop. Stop. Good and well, that's not what I'm saying. And further, the societies that really do behave like that with regard to women, you guys keep enabling. Until I hear you take the Muslim world to task for forcing women to wear headscarves, I don't want to hear a damn thing about how oppressed you are over here. Not a damn word. What percentage of new college students are women? Look that up and tell me how oppressed you are. What percent of postgraduate students are women? Look that up and tell me how oppressed you are. Men are literally getting buried in all those fields, all the STEM fields, all falling. Now, why would that be? Because again, that's primarily intellectual pursuits. This is something that women can handle. But I don't see any of y'all stepping up to work in the oil field. I don't see any of y'all stepping up to run the sewer lines. It's time to admit that we can't get by without each other. You understand that? Let me say that again because some of y'all are still stuck in what you think I'm saying because you're projecting your own bullshit onto me. We've got to learn that we cannot get by without each other. And we have to learn that the separation of those gender roles exists for a reason. Do you understand that? Men cannot, they can, but again, we're looking at 7%. Women can work in factories. It's not what they're built for. Men can be the homemakers. It's not what we're built for. The destruction of the nuclear family, one of the primary tenets of both actual and cultural Marxism. BLM wrote it right into their freaking code. Why? Because they're Marxists and therefore my enemy. Separation exists for a reason. Because it has been the strength that has sustained the West through every enemy that's come against it. It is the fundamental structure that is inherent genetically to our species. Look at the other long sustaining civilizations in the world. Lest you think I'm being a racist and just thumping my chest about white Europeans. The Chinese, granted, they're under communist rule now, so that, but here's the thing, that's why they're winning. Do you understand that? They are the primary existential adversary to the West. And why are they winning? Because they're not effing around with this nonsense. Over there, men are men, women are women. The gender roles are divided. They don't play around with the trans nonsense. They don't give a damn about your pronouns or sparing your feelings. They are a functioning civilization and they are going to win at this rate. Let me come back to that. All you oppressed groups out there, whether it's women or particularly the LGBTQ community, or more in particularly the TQ. You only exist because you live under the protective umbrella of the West. Do you understand that? So the word oppression had better never escape your lips in my presence. Ever. Over here, you don't get your first choice of baker when you go to have your wedding cake made. You still get the damn cake. You just don't get your first choice of baker. And that's oppression. People decide that if you look enough like a dude, they're not going to call you a chick, and that's oppression. People know the name that you've adopted, but still persist in calling you your old name because you're trying to be a dude that actually looks like a chick, and that's oppression. Okay. Am I saying that the people that do that to you aren't assholes? Oh, they are assholes. Absolutely, without equivocation. I wouldn't do that to you as a general rule. I think it's really shitty behavior for any human being. I totally believe that. Do you want to know what happens to you in the Muslim world? They cut off your they cut off your effing head. So this civilization that you're trying to destroy from the inside out because it's so oppressive, you should be praying that we win. Because if they win, what happens over there? They chop off your head. What happens to you in China? You get disappeared. You get sent to a re-education camp. Do you know what that looks like? Why don't you do some reading, some Alexander Solzhenitsyn? And I know I know Solzhenitsyn. I know we can have that discussion. Why don't you read some Solzhenitsyn? Why don't you read some of the stuff that went on Stalin's gulags? Why don't you read some of the survivors of North Korea, communist China, and see what happens to you if they win? I want you to have that individual sovereignty. I really do. I really do. I want you to live in a world that brings you the most happiness that you can possibly wrangle out of life in spite of your mental illness. I want that for you. I do. I want you to have a supportive network of friends. I want you to have a family that love you. But in order for you to exist, we have to win. Oppression of women, oppression of women. You have more college graduates, more postgraduate college students, more people employed in intellectual pursuits in the STEM fields. You own it all now, ladies. New law students, new medical students. You own it all now, ladies. So that oppression thing ain't gonna fly anymore. We need y'all, but y'all better recognize that you need us too. Because every one of these maladies that I've discussed came about because you demanded it. Demanding equality is one thing. Working towards equality is one thing. Equity, go to hell. That goes for gender, that goes for race, that goes for any standard of measure. Equity, go to hell. What do we know about the racehorse and the plow horse? Don't make me go through it again because I will. Racehorse and the plow horse. No matter how hard you train a plow horse, he's never going to be able to run as fast as that racehorse. No matter how hard you train him, no matter what method you use to train him, plow horse isn't going to run as fast as that racehorse. The only way to render an equitable outcome is to cripple the plow horse. That racehorse, no matter how hard you train him, no matter what load you put on his back, how many times you drill that, what methodology you use, he will never pull as much as that plow horse. So how do we get to an equitable outcome? You got to cripple the racehorse. Equity is not a race to the top ever. And I want to see all of us elevate. I want to see the promise of the West fulfilled. So, ladies, we need y'all. Y'all need us. A lot of you guys on the left, I hear when it comes down to the law enforcement argument, I hear this all the time on the left. You know, man, all cops are bastards, man. We'd be better off. It's like, all right, cool. And the right's response is always, okay, if you think all cops are bastards, try living in a world without any. Some of us here would be okay, right? Doug, you'd be okay. I'd be okay. Tommy, you'd probably be okay. George, Ryan, we'd be okay in a world without cops. But the ones who are bitching about them the loudest are the first ones to call them as soon as shit gets sideways, aren't they? So I'm going to apply that same standard. Think men are useless? Try living in a world without them. Two things are going to happen to you tomorrow morning. Number one, you're going to hit that switch and the lights aren't going to come on. Second thing that's going to happen is you're going to use that horrible contribution of Western civilization, indoor plumbing. You're going to go to flush that toilet and it's not going to refill. Everything that you have in the West is a standard of living that is based around a network of men who, as Jordan Peterson said, are literally working themselves to death in some cases. So stop making memes out of it. Stop being tee hee hee with your little girlfriends. It's not cute. It's not funny. It's not empowering. We don't need men. What are men good for anyway? Okay. I remember how much the guys on the left were like, try living a day without a Mexican. Oh, okay, let's look at it. That's a rant for another day. Didn't mean to go this far down. You try living in a world without men. Try living in a world where women are running the show, let alone responsible for the infrastructure. Good luck with that. So it's time we all take a step back from this. It is one thing to push for equality. It is another thing to advocate for equity, but to have things this catastrophically out of balance and to say that we haven't gone far enough, that will no longer be tolerated. Here in the reading. I really had no intention of going that far on that particular bullet point. But as I said, Ryan and I have been talking about this for the past couple of weeks and just the nature of things getting shook up. What is that? Cops disappear. I'll have more women than I can handle. Also a good point. Also a good point. Less responsibility for hard labor. True, 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 true. Keaton was way out of his element, right? Back in the 80s, we even understood that before things got catastrophically out of whack. That was not the bullet point that I wanted to spend the majority of time on. Well, understood, but that's why I wanted to communicate with you more on that. And we can revisit it. We can totally rehash it. Totally rehash it. Um, Moving on. What did I get? I had no. Yeah, that was. Yeah, took it and ran with it. Might have get. Yeah, definitely got off post. We'll revisit it. We'll revisit it again. Um, Unraveling of narratives and unintended consequences. Let me jump in. Um, a whole lot of things falling apart this week. A whole lot of things falling apart this week. In terms of things that I will no longer abide. Um, what are men good for? We can live without men. Um, no longer abiding that. That's a real quick way to get unceremoniously booted, and I don't care where you are in my life. I don't care if your snatch brought me into this world. You get cut loose. It didn't actually get to that point. That wasn't why I cut her loose, but anyone at this point, anyone at this point who is still going to insist that our cadaver in chief is cognitively sound, it's no longer possible for me to rationalize that you just don't get it, that you just don't see it. I have people who are very, very close to me who voted for Biden because, and again, it's not like it was unbeknownst to them. People like myself and Joe Rogan were calling it before the election ever happened. He was already addled. He was already addled, right? Okay. Man was already addled. Totally gone off the deep end. Did anybody see the press conference this week? Anybody see it? The report came out. Man was completely laid into by the special counsel, right? Special counsel, we had been told, was of the highest possible order. When Merrick Garland first appointed him, we were told that this guy's really going to be on top of things. He's not going to treat Biden with kid gloves. He's really going to get into it. He's really going to do all of these things. And then he did his job. And he came out with the findings that legitimately the man could not remember when his son had died. He could not remember when he had been in office. Could not remember the years that he was in office. He could not remember the people who he was politically allied with. And that was the reason we're not going to press charges. Right there in the document, it said the man is too addled to stand trial. We're not going to prosecute because this is the way he's going to present himself to the jury. We're not going to be able to get a conviction. It flat said in the special counsel's report, yes, he mishandled information. Yes, he kept classified information. Yes, it was of the highest nature of classification. Is anybody here familiar with SCI classification? Anybody? SCI stands for sensitive compartmentalized information, right? Sensitive compartmentalized information, meaning need to know only, all right? When they say sensitive compartmentalized information, These are kept at specific facilities. In other words, they're not just kept in another hard drive or another zip file or on somebody else's computer or somewhere stored out in the cloud. They are kept in hard copies inside a facility that is only for that type of information. It's got to be signed off on by like three different people for you to even go in and look at the information. And even then, you're not allowed to take it out. You're allowed to go in, look at it, take notes, no photographs, take notes, find out what you need to find out, write down sources, whatever you need, and then leave the facility and the file stays. He had SCI files in open boxes in his garage. It's right there in the report. They're lying to you. And somebody thought it would be a good idea to turn this cadaver loose and let him defend himself after the report came out. First thing he did was step up to the end. First thing he did was step up to the podium and lie. It said that I didn't do anything wrong. That's not what it said, first of all, Sparky. But he proceeded to go into how him being characterized as a person with lapsing memory and all kinds of other things, right? That was a mischaracterization. And to prove it, he spent the next 5 minutes forgetting things. I know exactly when my son died. I still wear the rosary from Our Lady of, and forgot the name of the church. My memory's solid on the whole Gaza thing. I told El Sisi, the president of Mexico. El Sisi's the president of Egypt, bro. There were others. And Ryan can tell you, I was first thing I did say because I messaged Ryan and I was like, they're replacing him. I said they're replacing him. They are replacing him. That was the only thing that I could think of in my head for them to put him so out on blast, so obvious. I messaged Ryan. I was like, they're getting ready to 25th Amendment his ass. There is no way. And actually, Ryan messaged me first. Ryan was like, they let him out past his bedtime? Yeah. I thought for sure they were going to 25th Amendment his ass. The last 2 days, they have doubled down. They have doubled down. Karine Jean-Pierre, Karine Jean Identity hired the press secretary. She lied for him, but of course she's going to lie for him. That's what she's paid to do. She's a liar, professional. And since we're talking about professional law, brief sidebar, I miss Jen Psaki. Oh, I miss her so much. I miss her so much because she could lie. Oh my God, that woman could lie, and it was like pouring forth poetry the way that she lied. And she was a redhead with a great ass. Great ass. And our head was right up it. Sorry, soundbite from Heat if you got that. I miss Jen Psaki. Green, Jean-Pierre. I guess it speaks volumes for her character. She's just a horrible liar. She came out, she lied for Biden, said he's 100% cognitively sharp. All the talking heads, Joy Reid on MSNBC and that Maddow guy and that Hayes chick. That's a new one. That Hayes chick and that Maddow guy, they all came out and doubled down. He's 100% cognitively sharp. It was politically motivated for them to say this. And then Kamala Harris got on and said this was totally politically motivated. And I'm thinking to myself, they know. They have to know. Why are they defending themselves? Why are they defending this? I can make some guesses. I still think ultimately they're going to have to replace him before the election because they know that this addled cadaver cannot beat Trump in the current incarnation. They know that he can't. I don't know why they're doubling down, but the fact is they are. They are. Which leads me to the next bullet point of us being in uncharted waters. The narrative is unraveling. and everybody can see it. Even CNN, surprisingly enough, CNN fact checked him. There was actually a reporter on CNN that actually did something approximating journalism, and he got out and did a fact check live on the air. Get the video on YouTube while you still can. He did a video live on the air where he was like, he said that he didn't do all this bad stuff with information, but the report says that he did. You know, he said that he didn't give this information to his ghostwriter, but his report said that he did. So even CNN's not covering for him anymore, but the rest of them are doubling down. What I'm saying is, and Tom, I've got all these thoughts. I've got all these thoughts myself here before I actually leave that post, right? They're going to put Newsom in after the public can't have a say. Possibly, I said Newsom too. Ryan vouched for me on that. Newsom was who I thought they'd replace him with. What I'm saying is the narrative is unraveling, and we have several potential scenarios for the 2024 election, some of which involve there not being an election. I don't want to even entertain that one. I don't want to think much about it. If there is an election, participate. I implore you. We don't do black pills here. If they are going to steal it, make them steal it. If they are going to rig it, make them rig it. Show up, vote, participate. All you black pill flat earth guys out there, man, they're just going to steal it anyway. Okay, prove it. That is my admonition to you. And in exchange for that, because we are compromising, here's what I'm willing to do for you. After this, and I'm stating this publicly, if they pull off another heist, right? If they cancel the elections outright, then that's obvious. It's on. If they pull off another heist, another rigged job, another irregularities job, I give you my word, you will never hear me tell you to participate in the democratic process again. That is my word, stating it publicly. You'll never hear me tell you to participate in the democratic process again. Whether or not I choose to, that's on me. But I won't tell you to try to work within the system if they manage 2 presidential elections in a row being rigged, upset, stolen, irregularities, whatever you want to call it. If they manage to pull that off twice in a row, particularly if they continue to run Biden, I'm stating here for the record publicly, you will never hear me advise you to participate in the process again. That's it. My word. My word on the 11th of February 2024 at 8:48 p.m. Mountain Time. I'll never tell you to do it again. This time, we got to pull out all the stops. So we got to go out with a bang. We got to go out for no other reason than to clear our conscience. We have to go out like we're putting every single thing in, because remember the boxes. We're past it. We still got the soapbox, and I'm still up on that soapbox. The fact that I'm here shows you that I'm up on that soapbox. Jury box, you get called in, you know what to do. You know about jury nullification. Ballot box, man. Ballot box. Because the only step past that is a cartridge box. God forbid. God forbid. But I give you my word. 11 February 2024 at 8:49 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If they pull off 2 rigged, manipulated, stolen, heisted, irregularity, whatever, if they pull off another job like they did in 2020, they do it back to back, and particularly if they do it with Biden still in the running, you will never hear from me again to tell you to participate in the democratic process. It's all or nothing. That's my compromise. In the meantime, All you Patrick Henrys and everybody else out there need to shut your mouth and get with the program. Give it everything you got. One last hurrah. Think of it as standing on the deck of a ship in Boston Harbor and tossing tea overboard. Oh, we're tossing ballots. Whatever you name, do it. Last time around, let's go with a big hurrah. And the last thing I'm going to get into is for your 4Bs. 4Bs and then a change direction. 4Bs. Beans, bullets, and band-aids. Those are the 3Bs. James Wesley Rawls, the heir apparent uh, to Mel Tappan and all the great survivalist authors, Bruce Clayton, all those other guys. Survivalblog.com. You guys should be reading it every day. I do. Beans, bullets, and band-aids. That's his 3. So you saw in the bullet point I put 4Bs. I add one more to that, and that is bleach. Beans, bullets, band-aids, and bleach. Bleach, of course, meaning more than just bleach. Good to have bleach in your stores, but I'm talking about antibacterial soaps, disinfectants, antiseptics, all that kind of stuff. I think that is just as essential as the rest of the stuff, because beans, bullets, and band-aids, that's great. So you can eat, right? And you can shoot for whatever you need to, self-defense, you can hunt, you can whatever. Band-aids, fantastic to patch yourself up. And some people will have some of that 4B in their medical kit, antiseptics. But you need larger quantities. Things like antibacterial soap, antiseptics, all these things. Get it squared away. I'm giving you all a homework assignment. There was a post that I made back in 2022. Yes, 2022. I made a post. And it was for a last-ditch effort of people who were late to the program. This was before the Biden inflation really, really hit. And I gave it about a $500 budget, right? I said, let's say you got a $500 budget. The average person's paycheck, whatever. Take that $500, you're going to put it into this. You're going to go to Walmart and you're going to get this list of things. You're going to go to Dollar Tree, you're going to get this list of things. You're going to go to Tractor Supply, you're going to get this list of things. I need to find that. If you guys can help me find it so I can repost it. All right? Because there is going to be a change of direction here. And I'm glad you were here for me to announce it. Participation in social media formats is going to get severely shifted going into the next few weeks. I am in a different place mentally. I am in a different place spiritually. If you guys haven't followed me on Substack, I encourage you to do that. I'm tired of throwing things out on most of the social media platforms because it's pearls before swine. They are suppressing me from my target audience, and I'm not reaching it. I want you guys to follow me there, okay? Because the articles that I post, the articles that I repost, news articles that I repost, okay? On Substack, I can restack them. So you won't just be getting my writing. You won't just be getting my essays, my analysis, any of that. You're going to be getting stuff from writers that I respect. And I want you guys to follow those writers. I want you guys to get more engaged in actively reading and exercising your brains. Facebook is fast food, man. I will continue to post things on the fan page, right? You will see the occasional funny is funny if there's a meme that really strikes me, but I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I don't. I will be the signal that carries through the noise in accordance with Live the Three. I will be the signal. I will be the voice, right? But what is the point of being a voice if you're just pissing into the wind? What is the point of being a voice if you're shouting inside a closet? If every time you open your mouth to scream, somebody puts a sock down your neck, what is it? And that's where most of the social media platforms have come to. I know that there are half of you guys out there that don't see half of my Instagram posts, that don't see half of my Facebook posts. Substack is a place where, number one, they don't censor, period. And number two, they don't shadow ban, period. So I want you guys to go to my Substack and I want you guys to subscribe there, please. It's still free, right? Even if I decide to start charging for it at some point, my restacks where I'm posting other people's stuff is still going to be free. My short stuff is still going to be free. But I'm getting kind of tired of my own bullshit, to tell you the truth. That's really what it comes down to. I'm feeling convicted in my heart. I'm just tired of my own bullshit. I continue I continue to scream in a freaking closet and then wonder why I'm not getting heard. It's ridiculous. Grow up, Barb. Okay, I will. I will maintain the pages. You will see me on Facebook. You'll see me on the fan page. I will still be doing the Facebook Live on my fan page, Reverend Bart's America. I'll still be doing that. I'll be engaged, but that's not going to be anything. Not going to be anything like what it was. Don't have the space for it anymore. I'm looking for other formats. Telegram is another one that I'm looking into. I haven't really established a presence over there yet, but I'm looking into that. Rumble is another one that I'm looking into. But I want you guys to subscribe to the Substack because it's the written stuff that's really going to carry the day. Anybody can anybody can make little witty comments about somebody else's article and then repost it. What does that serve? What does that serve when the stretch has just been narrowed to the point? It's just I would rather you be reading people of substance. I would rather you be reading me. I would rather you be reading Greenwald, Taibbi, Clavin, any of the people that I restack from time to time. Read, because people have forgotten how to do that. And that's what's going to keep you engaged. It's what's going to keep your mind sharp. You're still going to see some posts for me. I'm figuring out how to do short Instagram videos. You'll see me on Instagram. But again, the just reposting for the sake of it, man, it's just not serving my purpose anymore. I've got from 4 to 8 weeks on this job. I don't know what the days are. I don't plan on taking any fatigue days, so this may be the last sermon you're going to see for a while. Our interaction is going to be somewhat limited, but I appreciate y'all being here regardless. And as always, I thank you for your input. Don't think this is not me going away. This is not my retirement party or anything like that. Basically, I'm just saying we're shifting gears. We're shifting gears because we are getting into a season of uncertainty. We are going into some very, very tough times, and a lot more of the stuff that I will be posting is going to be prepper tips. Some of you guys have a moderate stash. Some of you guys have a moderate storage plan. Some of you guys have retreat properties. Some of you guys, and not everybody's going to be on the same page. But without sounding like an alarmist or a chicken little, we are getting into some uncharted territory here. We legitimately have a party in control, an incumbent party, who is saying that their number one opponent, even being allowed to run, is an existential threat to democracy. And further saying that any third party candidate that tries to throw their hat in the ring is taking votes away from the cadaver and therefore they're a threat to democracy. This doesn't leave a whole lot of wiggle room, does it? What they are basically saying unequivocally is anyone except our guy who's running is a threat to democracy. Now, again, democracy, I'm not a big fan of in the first freaking place. Democracy. But I'm a big advocate for the West, and I'm a big advocate for representative government. I don't know what democracy they have in mind, but when you have people who are outright, they've already weaponized the justice system against us, they've weaponized big tech and media against us, and now they're saying that anyone running but them is a threat to democracy. You should be terrified by that. Me, I'm not terrified because I've got guns and my faith. So I will just say that I am concerned. I'm concerned not just for myself. I'm concerned for y'all. I'm concerned for the future of this country as we know it. This country's going to survive. I'm very big on the long view for America. We've been through a lot worse. But we are coming down to crunch time. You remember the one sermon that I did where we called 1968 the year of the trip hammer? Okay. If 68 was the year of the trip hammer, 2024 is the year of the live grenade. Pin's been pulled. Pin's been pulled, and 3 of our fingers are damaged. So we've got that sucker. We're wrapped up here, and the only thing holding that spoon on is that pinky. And that pinky's getting tired. Fatigue's setting in. I'm not trying to be alarmist here. I'm just telling you about, and you know, again, hope against all hope. Hope against all hope that I'm wrong about all of this and that everything goes off without a hitch and that we carry on business as usual. I would love for that to happen. I am certainly not one of these boogaloo boys out there going, why can't we get on with the Civil War? Certainly not. Last thing on the planet that I want is violence, but it's still on the list. Not because I want it, but because those people who are seeking to destroy the West from the inside out, they want it. I would rather it never come to that. But as they say, famous man once said, I am not looking for violence. But if someone brings it to my door, the bringer will find me at home. God forbid that eventuality present itself. God forbid that contingency present itself. But I will be giving you tips to square that house up. So, guys, if you can, find that article that I posted. Find that little write-up. It's a big, long thing, and I might have even moved it over to my blog. I'll check that out as well. But I need to get that reposted. I'm basically just going to be offering tips for y'all to get your house in order from here on out because we're in uncharted territory. And right now, I will be the signal. I will be the signal if I can punch through the noise, but I will not be subsumed and become part of the noise. One thing I will not allow myself to do. So thinking about it on that. What? Why don't you go kickstart a grenade? That's pretty good, Tommy. That's pretty good. This week I learned all the way to retrofit old buildings with Faraday cages. Quite simple and frightening. Oh shit, G-Dub, we need to talk. In any case, guys, we're going into some sketchy stuff. I want everybody to. I want everybody to really, really reflect. How bad could it get? How quickly? And how prepared are you for it if it does? And everything that I do from here on out is going to be towards that end. It's not going to be hate. I'm not going to be egging it on. I'm not going to be cheerleading for, state secession. I'm not going to get into any of that nonsense. I just refuse, man. It's very, very difficult because I'm consistently trying to be the signal and I'm consistently getting subsumed, not overwhelmed by, but subsumed with the noise. In other words, the din of it just gets so overwhelming that I'm yelling, trying to get through, but the other voices yelling are just blocking out my voice. Either that or put me in a closet to where I can yell all I want in there. And that's not where I want to be, man. Because it doesn't help. Doesn't help me, and therefore it certainly doesn't help you. So going forward, I'm going to try to offer up some things that can help you. That'll be that. Close with a prayer real quick. Lord God, as always, clarity and discernment above all things. Clarity and discernment because the noise is loud. Noise is loud, sometimes overwhelming. We are beset on all sides by it. We can't escape it. It surrounds us in our environment on a day-to-day. And the only way that we can keep our ears from bleeding out with all this noise is to stay focused on the signal and to make a conscious effort to block out the distractions. I choose to stay focused on the light and the truth. I see fit to stay focused on your light and your truth. For those that love me and those that I love, for those that respect me and those that I respect. And I've got some good friends here, Lord. I've got some very good friends. as your clarity and discernment has more of an effect on my life, that circle becomes smaller, but those bonds become tighter. And whether they are walking in the light or whether they are not, Lord, they are very valuable men. They are good men. They are men of character, men of morality, men of spirit, solid moral compasses, and I ask that you watch over them. I ask that you watch over them and their loved ones. I ask that you provide guidance. I ask you to help them to know that they can lay that burden down, Lord. But until they decide to lay that burden down, I ask that you give them the strength in their backs to carry it. That's all I ask for myself, Lord. I will carry as much of this load as I can for as far as I can because I know that when it becomes overwhelming, I can lay this burden down. I ask that you give us that clarity, that discernment, that strength, keep us walking in the light of the truth. If that is the light of your truth for men of faith, so be it. If that is in the light of the truth for those that still, for those that are still on a secular path, at least keep them in that truth. Because if they are rooted in truth, eventually they will come to the light. Pray these things in the name of the risen Christ. Amen and amen. Uh, I love y'all, man. I mean it. Part of the shift that I'm making right now is the people that are here. Some of y'all are my audience. Most of y'all are my friends. If I look at the register of how many people are watching live right now, I could say that just about, in fact, almost without exception, I can't even think of an exception right now. The people that are watching this right now, this minute, the 11 people that are still watching live, all of you. Circle gets smaller, but the bond gets tighter. I appreciate the help that y'all extend. I appreciate the support. Hell, man, I appreciate you guys showing up on a Super Bowl Sunday and listening to a fat ass toothless cripple rant and rave for a couple hours. I'll pass around that collection plate because I always do. You guys know the drill. I mean, if you can do, if not, I get it. But I'm on Cash App, Zelle, Facebook Pay, all that good stuff. If you guys want to kick down some coin, that's cool. But main thing is, man, y'all being here honors me. So I try to honor y'all. That's part of the shifting gears coming up is I want to make sure that I can honor y'all by bringing something that's actually going to contribute instead of just be more background noise. Speaking of background noise, gonna go out on some gonna go out on some clutch here, man. Fortunate son, Neil Fallon and Clutch. If you don't know, you better ask somebody. Tell you what you guys can do, man. Not just for me, but for yourselves. Like my boy Stone is always saying, man, live the three. Live the three. What are the three? You guys know the prime directives. Emmy knows the prime directives. Her old man, maybe that big ass sign. Ah, anyway, man. Live the three. Signal and noise. The noise. Signal to noise ratio is all thrown off right now. You have got to stay true to the signal. And when you catch yourself becoming the noise, you got to be willing to take a step back. And that's what I'm looking at myself right now. But you got to be able to punch that signal through the noise, deliver something to people that's going to reach them. You got to be that light in a world full of darkness. They will overwhelm you with the darkness. They will demoralize you, dehumanize you, emasculate you with the darkness. Try to make you believe that there is nothing in this life but darkness. You have got to be the light, and you have got to have the strength to carry that light to punch through the darkness. Which brings us to the third and final, the iron rule, the prime directive. You have got to be strength. Strength in a world full of weakness, because without strength, nothing else matters. I'm talking about strength here, yes, but also here, and even here. Because without the strength, you will not have the tenacity to punch that signal through the noise. Without the strength, you will fail under the weight of carrying that light through the darkness. Strength above all. I want all y'all to be strong and stay strong. Look out for yourselves. Look out for each other. Speak the truth though the heavens fall, baby. Make no peace with evil. And we all know how to spot that evil. I love y'all, man. Thank you for being here. Reverend Bart, reporting from the road. God bless you all, man. Thank you very much. Hopefully, we'll see you next Sunday. Stay tuned. See how it goes. I love y'all. Thank you for being here. Peace.